Okay, so I'm filming this video right after the last one. Like, literally, I just finished the last one up. And I thought I'd talk about this. It's, again, about the no-eyed toad. And I've made videos before, or I made at least one video that I can remember. I've made a lot of videos. It's pretty surprising. But I've made a video about why not to take turtles out of the wild, and I stand by that seriously, and I recommend that when people message me all the time. They're like, I just took in a turtle from the road, or from a baby turtle, baby painted turtle. It's always a painted turtle, and it's always a baby, or something like that. And I'm like, go let it go. That's my first thing. I say, go let it go, and then I answer whatever their question is. Because, I mean, if they don't let it go, that's not on me, but at least I could help out. Like, I don't want to be, like, rude, like, you know, just not answer their question. So I'll go ahead, I'll say, you know, I recommend letting it go, and I explain myself, and then I will tell them, if you decide not to do that, then here is the answer to your question, or something like that, or I help out as much as I can. But there are some exceptions to that. So basically, my thought process is, if an animal's doing just fine in the wild, and that is as a species and as an individual, so that animal is completely healthy, and it's an animal of, like, well, either way, really. So if it's animal, like, as a species concerned, if it's, like, not doing so well as a species, then leave it alone. And if it is doing well as a species, also leave it alone. And there's different reasons for that. So if it's not doing so well as a species, leave it so it can become a part of the breeding population. And if it is doing well, well, then there's no reason to take it, because it's doing just fine in the wild. So somebody, a very skilled person that has lots of knowledge and understanding of breeding animals, should start to breed animals that aren't doing well in the wild. So, like, I don't know, like sulcata tortoises, like, there's a lot of them, at least in the United States, being sold as pets. They're very, very common in the pet trade, and they're pretty well bred, I believe. But in the wild, not so much. They're not doing so well. And to me, that's partly, I mean, the fact that they're doing well in captivity is good news. So a lot of animals need to be in captivity, at least I believe. But those are the people that should have those, are the people that can breed them, the people that are informed about animals. Most of the time, I mean, the people that should be taking animals from the wild aren't the ones that should be commenting on my video asking for help, if that makes sense. So that's another point, actually. If you don't really know how to take care of an animal, leave it in the wild. So I think that makes sense. I think that makes a lot of sense. So if you need help taking care of the animal, then you're not saving it, because it's probably going to do just fine on its own. But like I said, there are exceptions. Captive or wild-caught animals are important to start breeding populations, but that's not for the common people to do, in my opinion. I mean, generally, like, people aren't going to do that. Like, I'm not saying you can't, I'm just saying you're probably not going to, or, you know, whoever. But what if an animal's injured? What if it's not going to make it in the wild? Well, then I say, as long as it's legal, then you should nurture it back to health and then let it go. Or if it can't go back into the wild, then take it and try to keep it and nurture it and give it the best life it can have in captivity. And that's kind of, I think all that makes pretty well sense. So if you find a turtle that has some type of, you know, like, lots of, like, cuts or something, like, very injured, maybe it just recently lost a limb or something, then I think it is pretty wise to try to nurse it back to health in captivity. Now, ideally, you already know how to do that, or at least you know basic turtle care. You know, you don't want to take it from the wild and give it like very bad care, because then you're not really helping it. So keep that in mind. And this is with like the vast majority of animals, it's pretty much the same, but that's pretty much just that. Like if you want to help a turtle, or if you want to help an animal, if it's healthy, just leave it in the wild. It'll have so much space, and you know, all those things. Or maybe, you know, possibly relocate it. Now, I don't know that that's a good idea. So like if you find a turtle that's like in the middle of the highway or something, you're going to want to find somewhere very close. You're going to find somewhere very close that is like a good habitat for it. Or if you find a turtle that's like in a really bad pond in like the middle of the city that's like really gross and everything, there's lots of trash there, maybe relocate it to somewhere that's more better for it, that's more natural and everything for it. So I'm not necessarily recommending you to do that. That's kind of your choice, but don't like take it home. I don't think that's a good idea, unless it's unhealthy and it's not going to make it in the wild. Then you might want to keep it and nurture it back to health, and then release it. One thing with that is, like in Ohio, you have to release a turtle within 30 days of having it in captivity. Otherwise, it's then illegal to let it go. Also, you can't keep a turtle in captivity with other turtles. So like if I took a Midland painted turtle out of the wild, which I would never do, or never plan to do unless it was unhealthy, I'd want to keep it separate than any of my turtles, because my turtles could have some type of like underlying disease that could spread to that turtle, and then if I released it, then it would spread to the native population, and we wouldn't want that to happen at all. Okay, so a real quick note here from the editor, which is me, that per the Ohio Department of Natural Resources webpage, which I was on the other day trying to get a permit, and I applied for it, so we'll see how that goes, but I'll do a different video about that. It has a page on orphaned and injured wildlife, and essentially, and it has an area for turtles especially, and it pretty much agrees with what I'm saying, but it also says do not relocate them, like leave them alone. If they're fine, like just do not relocate them. So I mean, the general rule is if you see them on the road, get them off the road, preferably where they're going, but do not relocate them. And that makes sense. I mean, they have their own internal map going on there, so just keep them where they were, and they know where they were, and you know, you won't have to worry about any of that. And it is also kind of like illegal I believe, to take like turtles out of the wild. So you need to have a wildlife rehabilitation permit. So I do not have that, and I hope to in the future, but you have to go through like training, which would just be helpful in general if I could go through training of any kind. So I hope to one day get that, so then I can personally like rescue wildlife and whatnot. Not that I'll be like go out looking for it, but I'll probably, I mean, I'll be on a list somewhere. So that seems like how they, like if somebody like runs into an injured turtle or something, they can call me, or you know, my information is somewhere according to this. But I do not have that permit. I'm actually trying to get a permit to own captive native reptiles, because I didn't know I needed one. But I talked to the people, and I should be able to get one and everything. So I will walk you guys through that process. But that's just an important thing to know. It's generally like just leave the animal alone, and according to, you know, the Ohio Department of Wildlife, or Department of Natural Resources Division of Wildlife, that's pretty much what they say to do as well. And I realize that, you know, not everybody lives in Ohio, but I'm not going to learn the laws of all the states in the United States or other countries or whatever. I can pretty much just focus on where I live, I guess. So I'll do videos about that and how that relates to everything, but I'd assume, like, at least in the United States, it's pretty much the same across the board. So that was just a real quick thing I wanted to mention. Generally, you just don't want to take animals from the wild, because I know, at least in Ohio, you need to have a permit to have wild animals, and you basically cannot have wild animals. So you can have native animals, but they have to be captive bred. Otherwise, it's just not really allowed. So I know, like, there's only 2 types of turtles that you can legally take out of the wild in Ohio, while I've seen, like, people do take a ton of other ones. So I know it's not overly regulated, so that's kind of alright-ish, because the laws aren't made very clear either. So, like, I didn't know these for most of my life. So to quote the website real quick, do not make a wild turtle your pet. Understand that wild animals are born to live their lives in the wild. So, not in a house or a cage. Also, raising a wild animal in captivity is illegal unless you have a state permit. So, I know I don't, and, you know, I'm pretty sure that absolutely none of the people that have messaged me about having a wild animal that they took from the wild have a state permit. So let's just be mindful of that. But that is, yeah, so pay attention to those types of laws if you're looking to try to do any of this. So how does this relate back to the eyeless toad? The eyeless toad is an animal that could not survive in the wild. Now, as far as I knew, keeping it in captivity was the best thing for it, because it didn't have any eyes. So the day that I found it on the road. As I'd said in the last video, I'll just kind of recap on this. I found it on the road while I was biking, and it was the morning, and it was going to get really hot that day, and it didn't have any eyes, so it was either going to, like, roast on the road, which would have been horrible, like dehydrate on the road because it had no idea where it was going, or it would have gotten hit by a car. So I personally was like, I don't really want that to happen to it. So I took it home and I tried to help it in captivity. Unfortunately, for some unknown reason, it passed away. But at the same time, that was really to be expected with a deformed toad, because it just, I don't know. Like, first of all, one of the things that's kind of makes this a little bit less sad is that the quality of the life of a eyeless toad probably isn't great, because it really can't interact with anything, it can't do anything besides eat and defecate, which is kind of what, like, some frogs and toads do anyway. But I don't know, I felt really bad for it because it couldn't really do anything, and I was really worried about it because it doesn't have any nostrils either, so I wasn't sure if it could breathe when it was eating. And there was just different things that I was like, this toad really shouldn't be living, but I'm not going to, stop it. So there was that, and then as far as, like, populations go, there's a reason why this was going to, get hit by a car or, like, dehydrate or just not survive. It's because you really don't want animals that can't survive to survive. And this is different with injury, but more with, like, deformities. This is kind of a larger, I feel like, more, like, controversial topic. But as far as, like, adaptations and things like that go, there's kind of like the weak die out and the strong survive, and that's how that kind of works, right? And with an eyeless toad, or like an animal that's deformed in some way that's very bad, there's kind of a reason that they would die in the wild. So, I mean, as far as captivity, it's not hurting anything to be alive, and I don't think that it would pass on its eyeless genes, or whatever, however that works. Like, it's not gonna create a bunch of more eyeless toads. I don't think that would have happened, but that's just something to consider, I guess. So this was just something I had the opportunity to talk about. Unfortunately, it's an unfortunate opportunity because the eyeless toad did pass away, which, as I said in the last video, is very disappointing for me. So I hope that you guys enjoyed. This is kind of different. This is something I want to talk about so much more, because like I said, I get a lot of comments about that, and it hurts, because I know that these people are keeping them, like taking home baby turtles and keeping them in like Tupperware containers or something like that. And that's just not what they deserve, when they can very easily live in very naturalistic areas in the wild, you know, very good habitats in the wild. I know there is areas for them to live, so it's unfortunate to see them taken into captivity for no reason, and especially when there's so many turtles in captivity that need a home. So if you want to give a turtle a home, find one that really needs a home and do that. One that actually needs one, that's from captivity, that was already in captivity. Okay, so real quick, I should probably clarify that I did not know about the wildlife rehabilitation permit that we talked about earlier in the editor's note while filming the majority of this video. So what I say kind of might contradict what I'm doing, and also what I say at other times. So I just want to make that clear. So I will not, like, I honestly didn't know about that a whole lot, and I just didn't know the thing. So as I learn more, I know what to do properly and everything. So I'll not, you know, I'm very against taking animals out of the wild, but now I know if I find an animal that I think is injured or whatnot, to call a wildlife rehabilitator. And I need to, like I said, I want to try to get that permit, but at the same time, I read, and you have to be 18 years or older. So I don't know if you have to be 18 years or older to take the, whatever the course is, or something that you have to take to be able to get it. You have to take a wildlife rehabilitation training, and I don't know if you have to be 18 years or older to get that, but I'll look into that and see how that is. But I mean, I'm already up there, so once I get to that age, I will be looking into doing that, so then I can help out wildlife and whatnot, specifically reptiles and stuff, because I have the materials to do that, and I believe that I can. And also, I mean, it's always great to have, you know, a little bit of extra training or learning and doing different things. So I will, you know, I won't mess around with wildlife anymore, you know. I'll leave the no-eyed toads to their own devices, I guess. But I hope that you guys enjoyed. If you did, like it down below. If you have any comments or concerns, comments below. And if you want more content, then subscribe. Have a fantastic day.